Welcome, I'm Stephen Burns from Chromelution.com, and I'm going to share with you a painting program that I've become quite enamored with. It's called Artrage 3.0. Now, to find out more about Artrage, go on over to Artrage Home, artrage.com. We have demos on here. Currently it shows 2.6, but I believe they have a version 3.0 to download as well. Learn more about the program. I've been using Painter for a while, but when I came across Artrage, I figured, I'm really going to need to share this one because it's very easy. It makes the connection between a traditional and digital way of creating. Now, also to make you aware, I'm using throughout this tutorial the Wacom tablet. I'm using currently the medium size Intuos 4 tablet where I have pressure sensitivity from my pen to apply my painting techniques. Okay, let's go into the program, and I'm going to show you, kind of share with you a little bit about the interface, and in subsequent videos I'm going to talk about the individual tools. But I've discovered that there's three places that we're going to be accessing most of our tools and commands in Artrage, and the first is our color box here, or color picker, and we have our secondary and primary colors, or RGB being the red, green, and blue, our primary colors, and our cyan, magenta, and yellow for our secondary colors. As I scroll this across, you'll see those colors being applied right here in your color picker, which is also being applied in combination with luminosity, which is your whites, to your density, which is more your blacks. So we're mixing the luminosity and density with our values here, and we're seeing the final value chosen right here in the bottom, and just works just like the color picker in Photoshop. And I'm going to talk about Photoshop in relation with this because many of the shortcuts and functionality it's the same as Photoshop. Also on the right hand side, like Photoshop, we have layers. We simply click on the button and that will open up our layers here. We can add additional layers. I'm going to go ahead and click new. An additional layer has been added. Now right up in here we can turn them off and on, and I'm going to share that functionality in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and hit the X here, and that'll make it turn it right back into a button. The second place we're going to access all of our commands in Photoshop, or not Photoshop but Artrage, it's right over here in our tools palette. And as I click on the tools, just like Photoshop, we're going to have some properties. Now Photoshop has properties or tools palette, which gives you the various aspects of the tools for controlling their states or their functionalities. Now here in Artrage they're called settings. Click on settings. Here are your settings. Now if I click on every tool, each one has its own option or settings, as it's called in Artrage 3. In addition, we have presets. We click on the preset button. Let's bring that over to the side, and every tool has a list of presets. So the palette knife has various palette knife styles. We go to our oil brush. We have different oil brush styles, and if we right up here in the top, if we click it, it's telling us that okay, that is the oil brush that's being applied. Alright, so if I go to eraser tool, there's my eraser styles, and the crayon, and of course, or the hard wax, soft wax for the crayon. Alright, let's go ahead and close these up here. In the last place you're going to access all of your commands and tools in Artrage are right up here in your menus. File menu, edit menu, tools menu, and we have other menus to access deeper commands in the program. Now all of these can be cascaded down to buttons, even the menus. On the far left hand side, we click it, it makes the menu a button. Down here for our tools, we'll click this little serrated edge here, and it will turn that into a button as well. And the same thing for our color palette. So we can work this way. I'm going to go ahead and open them up, and also by clicking on it, so that I'm going to have the default of what you're going to see when you load it on there. Alright, so another neat functionality is the tab key. We hit the tab key, it turns everything into buttons, and hit the tab key again, it brings everything out to full view. Just like in Photoshop. Now Photoshop, you hit the tab key, everything goes away. Here in Artrage, it simply commits them to buttons, which allows to clear your desktop space as well. Now if I decide to hit a right click, now watch what happens. A right click, makes everything go away. So I have nothing but the canvas, so I can draw and paint on the canvas, and go ahead and click it again, or right click, and everything comes back again. Alright, so just like Photoshop, we have layers. I'm going to click on the layers here, and I'm going to select the first layer, and I'm going to apply a little paint here. Here's my oil brush, and just like all tools in Photoshop has options, we have settings. And watch, I'm going to paint right over. See that go away? The settings palette went away as I painted over it. That's a nice functionality in Artrage. It's something I wish Photoshop had. That way it just goes away rather than me having to come over here and move it out of the way. We have options here for thinners, add some thinners, and I'm going to go more into this a little bit later. But you can see the strokes are less defined. If I add a little less thinner, and I'll get a little more of the strokes. Okay, see what's happening here? Let's go up here to the top layer and apply another tool. How about this chalk here? Let's change this to a bluish color, and let's draw right on the surface. And you see, as I draw, even on top of the paint here, it picks up that texture. Now, functionality in Photoshop for zooming in and zooming out of our canvas. The same functionality is in Artrage, the same shortcuts. Command or Control plus, just like in Photoshop, zooms in. Command or Control minus, as in Photoshop, zooms out. That's getting a little bit closer. If I would like to pan it, just like in Photoshop, hold the spacebar key, pull it around, and pan my canvas as I'm working in close here. Now, we have a neat little tool in Artrage. And if I go right up in here, you can see the little arrows. The left arrow and the right arrow represents our undo and redo. Watch when I hit this button here, which is called the Canvas Positioner, and select it, I get this little dial here. Click right on the outside, that blank space, put it right over here so we can see a little bit better what's going to happen. And if I click on the zoom, which is your magnifying, moving my mouse up and down, click and hold, move your mouse or your pen up and down, that zooms in closer to your image. If you like to pan, click and hold on it and pan your canvas accordingly. Now, if we want to, let's zoom down a little bit more. If we want to rotate our canvas, place your mouse right out here. It'll highlight that ring to a three-dimensional greenish view, and let's rotate our canvas around. And it's really fast as well. Okay, and very nice functionality. So once we're done, I'm going to move it over just a little bit more. Once we're done, we hit the X in the middle, and it goes away. Let's go ahead and commit our settings to another button. Let's hit the X key. Right over here in our layers, just like in Photoshop, we can position layers or we can turn them on and off. Let's go ahead and do a new one. This time I'm going to select a crayon. Let's select yellow. For my crayon, I'm placing it on a new layer, and I'm basically dragging across. Now, just as I started to mention earlier, as I paint over some of this texture, that texture is still being shown. Control plus, let's kind of move on over here. It's showing through there, so the luminosity is protected so that we can see the actual texture. Now, what if we want to change the texture of our canvas? Now, this is really fun. You're going to enjoy this. Go up to the View menu, go to Canvas Settings, and look at what we have here. I made a separate group. You simply click Add Group. I called it Steve's Faves. I made some favorites of mine here just for this tutorial. If I move it over to the right just a little bit, right now it's in smooth mode, so if I click on Steve Canvas mode, it automatically applies a canvas. If I click on this canvas, which basically is applying the metallic, and all of these are various combinations of these settings: the grain size, the roughness, the metallic, the opacity is layer opacity. Okay, you see it's getting a checker pattern just like in Photoshop. It represents opacity. So I want my layer opacity in this example to be completely solid, and the texture is coming through. So no matter what layer you're working in, that same texture is going to come through. How about Steve Canvas number 2? Click on that one, and we get that canvas as well. I think I like the first one. Now, let's make some modifications to the first one. Let's increase roughness a little bit, and you can see it instantly being applied to the canvas, or also right up in here. I can change the color of the canvas. If we click it here, it's kind of a bluish color now. I can individually change the hue or saturation or luminance or each individual red, green, and blue, or I can come down here and select any color that I want. It automatically is being previewed right here. If I click OK, you can see the canvas has been applied with that background color. We can play with the lighting. We can come right over here and we can reset the canvas color for options as well, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to keep this one. I want to show you the lights here. Click on the lights and it's making it brighter. It's taking away our texture. If we click on it again, it brings back our texture. Alright, so I'm going to select it. Texture's gone. So the light is washing out the texture, and if we take it away, the texture is back. So I'm going to keep it there. And how about if I add a little metallic? There we are. And then let's save this one. So you can see that you can save any of your settings that you've changed. I clicked New, and I'm going to call it Steve Canvas number 3. Okay. Go ahead and highlight number 3. Make this simple. And now that it's done, I'm going to click the X key. So if I come back, change the color of my brush, let's make it a little greenish, and I'm going to work in my charcoal here, or the pastel, and let's go in and zoom in a little closer, and as I start to paint on it, we can see it's picking up that texture as well automatically. Let's go down and zoom back, come back on over. And I would like to also to notice that even though we had some paint strokes here, that texture on the fly comes through those strokes as well. So a really, really nice functionality in Artrage. Okay, so how about layer positioning? Take the blue, place it on top. See how I'm dragging it just like in Photoshop? And release, the blue comes on top. If I want to transform any of these, right down here, right below your tools, is click the transform tool, click on the layer is activated, it's blue in this case. I can move it around, resize it, put the mouse outside, just outside the borders of my transform square, and it will allow me to rotate. I can stretch it in either direction. Alright, so that should give you, hit enter or return on the keyboard, and that will commit your changes. So this should give you a good idea of how Artrage 3 is laid out, and some of the functionalities of the tools and the layers, and we're going to go more in the next tutorials on each of the tools and more functionality in Artrage 3.0. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm Stephen Burns from Chromallusion.com. Enjoy.